Boxing Showcase, sponsored by Legacy Boxing Promotions. Venice Collision, Ed Nunez, along with co-host Austin Colleen. And Austin, a lot of things to talk about in studio with us. We've got Albuquerque Journal writer Rick Wright. It's going to be great to have him on. I've read Rick's articles for many years, fan of his in the Journal, and he's going to talk to us about some of the fights that he's covered, fights that he's going to cover, and it's always great to have another boxing historian and knowledgeable person in studio.
Well, in talking to Rick, we share a love for a fighter named Holly Mims from the 50s and 60s. Of course, no one else knows who we're talking about when we bring him up. But when I interviewed Bob Foster, he was very impressed with Holly Mims.
Talk to us a little bit about Holly Mims. I'm a boxing historian, not like you. So tell us a little bit about. You've mentioned Holly Mims before on the show.
Well,
so
if you look at
it,
he had a tremendous chin, but his career started. Some guy saw him on a street corner and said, "Hey, come on, you want to make some money tonight?" And he literally learned how to fight in his first 18 fights. He had never fought. And I think it was his 19th fight before he scored a knockout win. But he fought the who's who of boxing in the 50s and 60s.
Name some names.
Well, the ones that amazed me is Reuben Carter was a killer.
Hurricane?
And Holly Mims was past his prime. He dropped Reuben Carter because he was just so slick.
The Hurricane you're talking about?
Yeah, Hurricane.
dropped
Holly Mims dropped him. Louis Rodriguez was probably the best pound-for-pound fighter. Once again, Holly was way past his prime. He couldn't take him out. And he loved to lay in the ropes. And he had very long arms. And when Bob Foster sparred with him, Foster had already been the all-service champion 3 times. And he had beat the crap out of Clarence Hennett, one of the top heavyweights. So he's in
Bob Foster you're talking about.
Yeah, and so Foster spars him. And we're talking. He said, "I couldn't hit him. He's blocking everything." I says, "You talking about Holly Mims?" He said, "Man," he says, "you're good." So he was talking about Holly Mims. And then he fought Joey Archer, and I believe our guest, that was one of the first fights he watched. And Archer was getting the big build-up, and everybody thought Mims got robbed. He was just a spoiler. And,
yeah, it sounds like quite a fighter. A couple other fights I wanted to ask you about. Vasily Lomachenko versus Jose Pedraza. Lomachenko wins in the 12th round. Tough 11th round. He's coming back from shoulder surgery. And, he beat Jorge Linares. And so Lomachenko victorious. What's next for Vasily Lomachenko? Talk about Mikey Garcia, but he's got a date with Earl Smith. So we'll have to see if that happens or not.
Well, I am embarrassed. I had friends over. We're watching the fight. I saw the introductions. The next thing I know, they're busting me. I slept through the entire fight. I was just, I had my recliner and I was.
Hey, once you hit that recliner, yeah, you're out. But Lomachenko, I think a good victory for him after the shoulder surgery. Coming up, Canelo Alvarez this Saturday versus Rocky Fielding. Alvarez back in against a super middleweight. So it doesn't look as if a Triple G matchup or rematch or the third fight is going to happen. They've gone in another direction there with Canelo Alvarez.
Well, the middleweight division suddenly is loaded with talent. And my friend Dan Kyoko, who puts out a magazine for retired fighters, he thinks that Alvarez jumped to super middleweight because it was easier pickings. Because there's some brutal fights in middleweight. Middleweight's becoming like the welterweights. It's loaded.
Interesting.
And his take on the whole thing is that Alvarez is walking around the minefield. Because there's some nasty fights in middleweight.
Well, that's interesting. That really is. Now, it's as tough as they come. Too controversial. He won the second fight, draw in the first. A lot of people thought Triple G won the second. So Alvarez returns to the ring this Saturday against super middleweight Rocky Fielding. You wanted to, you didn't. I don't know if I hadn't seen Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. That's a draw. A lot of people. I talked to a guy today that he had Fury winning almost every round. Now Wilder did knock him down twice.
Big time in the 12th round. Sid Ware, the amateur referee, he had the fight on his phone, and so after the Josh Torres' spectacular knockout, we were out at a club and we're watching the end of that fight on his little cell phone. Those are two big men to squeeze into that little
Oh,
cell.
yeah. Yeah.
So I have it recorded, but I haven't watched it yet.
I guess they're probably going to have a rematch, but neither one looks really ready to challenge Anthony Joshua. Neither one of them, neither one right now. Now, any big man can hit. Joe Frazier used to say that when they asked him if Muhammad Ali hurt him. Any big man can hit, right? But they'll have a rematch of that fight, I'm sure, in the spring.
I think, Mike, personally, I think Joshua Anthony's way overrated, and everybody raved about his win over Klitschko. I thought the fight showed how inferior they both were. You don't lean back when you're throwing punches. You step in. They both had the other guy in Queer Street, and they were so cautious, both of them. They each could have clearly won the fight in the middle of the rounds as far as that was concerned.
Well, Fury, a very awkward fighter himself. So is Deontay Wilder, I think, opens himself. He's not a technically sound, I don't think.
Well,
opens himself up to a lot of shots.
Well, he has a funny style. I don't think he takes advantage of his jab enough at all. He likes to throw wing-in combinations. I just think the heavyweight division, your best heavyweights are playing NFL football. They're not playing, that's where they are.
I don't know if that says so much about the heavyweight division, but, you wanted to mention, okay, we had Expo Explosion about 2 weeks ago. You were there at the Fairgrounds Manuel Lujan building. You wanted to mention some fights that might be coming up, and we mentioned this on the mic with Mike Adams on Saturday. So you mentioned Willie Villanueva maybe against Matthew Papitas Escobar.
Well, I figure you'd like that fight because you could use Escobar's nickname. And that is an interesting fight because they both fought the same opponent from Mexico. And it's interesting. Escobar was undefeated, but I didn't think he looked that sharp the other night. And
decision, right?
He won a decision. They both did. And I don't think Willie is a big puncher, but he's got a lot of skill. So that would be a good fight. It would bring the crowd in. I think we need more rivalries, neighborhood fights.
Well, you mentioned Escobar. We saw him against Tavorstig. Didn't look so good, and
Right.
That was a draw.
He struggled.
Some people might say Tavorstig won that fight, but he wins this one, and you still didn't think he looked that good.
I didn't think he looked that sharp, but he had been injured. So in defense of Matthew, he might have had some lingering problems.
We'll see what happens. We'll be back to Legacy Boxing Promotions after these messages.
Get into the game with Garden Swartz Team Sales. They have everything you need, from screen printing, embroidery, and digital printing services, high school letterman jackets, and all high school and club uniforms and individual and team apparel with the most reliable brands like Speedline, Rollins, and Wilson. And don't forget to check out the latest F7 Shut helmet. It's all at Garden Swartz Team Sales. Give them a call, 505-884-1234. Garden Swartz Team Sales.
Well, I'm going to the frontier, walking to the cat, root beer and a #1. Cover it with green stuff, one scoop is not enough. Find a booth is real tough, back by the Duke. Meet my family, meet my friends in the quirkiest restaurant I have ever been. All of Albuquerque's favorite spot, it's the Frontier Restaurant.
The Frontier Restaurant is a proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
The Barley Room, proud sponsor of Proview Networks for over 9 years, is pleased to introduce Black Iron Catering. From weddings and family reunions to birthdays and office parties, Black Iron Catering is perfect for any event. Contact Jamie at 505-459-8259 and book your event today. Black Iron Catering, let us bring our kitchen to you.
Don't sacrifice quality of flavor when you're in a hurry. Golden Pride offers ribs, fried chicken, green and red chili breakfast burritos, and Frontier Cinnabons. 4 great locations, or visit us online at goldenpride@abq.com. Golden Pride Barbecue Chicken and Ribs, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
The New Mexico High School Coaches Association, established in 1941, is an organization of New Mexico's best and most professional interscholastic coaches. Coaches across work daily to help our student athletes excel in the classroom, on the field of play, and in our communities. Students that participate in interscholastic activities attain higher grades, higher graduation rates, and higher wages. Responsible for the North-South All-Star Games, statewide Coaches Award Program, and providing multiple professional development opportunities for New Mexico's coaches. Be a great coach by coaching beyond the game.
Sadie's is a proud supporter of New Mexico high school sports and athletics, and we here at Proview Networks would like to thank Sadie's for their continued support in helping us bring you all of your New Mexico high school sports coverage.
Car Crafters, proud supporter of Proview Sports Network.
Are you sure we're supposed to be doing this?
Don't worry, I've watched him do it 1,000 times. Come on, what's the worst that can happen?
No! Bad dog!
Hi, welcome to Car Crafters. What happened?
Don't worry, we'll make it like it never happened.
Car Crafters, it's like it never happened.
Duke City Sports Bar, proud supporter of Proview Sports and New Mexico Youth Athletics. Catch all the sports action from high school, college, pros, and MMA on one of our 35 HD TVs. Start your night off right with any selection from our delicious menu prepared with fresh, never frozen ingredients. Duke City Sports Bar, Albuquerque's newest sports bar. Located on Eubank and Montgomery, dial 505-433-4020.
Locally loved restaurants like Farina Pizzeria, Farina Alto, and the Artichoke Cafe are the perfect venue for your next event. Farina Alto has traditional Italian food, plus handcrafted cocktails in a beautiful Northeast Heights location. Farina Pizzeria with a downtown vibe, amazing affordable wines, and local beer. And the Artichoke Cafe has set the standard for casual fine dining since 1989. Visit our family of restaurants and see what fine dining is all about.
Folks, there's no other way but to be all in. Either he's Lord of all or he is not Lord at all. And you can experience the real and authentic, true life change that only God can provide to humanity. See, when we truly encounter Jesus and purpose to know him and follow his teachings, hashtag life change will occur.
Collision. Ed Nunez in studio with Austin Colleen, now joined by longtime Albuquerque Journal writer Rick Wright. He's wrote about sports, boxing for many, many years. Rick, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure, thank you.
Austin?
Myself and Rick, I think I mentioned in the first segment, we both loved Holly Mims. He was kind of a unique fighter, great chin. He loved to fight off the ropes, which is the last place you want to be, but it always worked for him, except one time, Rocky Castellani cleaned him up.
I just remember the Joey Archer fight, being totally convinced that Mims had won going away, and when they read the decision, I was dumbfounded. How did this happen? But it happens.
Well, Archer had a tremendous left jab, and Holly Mims knew how to slip it.
Right.
And
right.
he had nothing else.
Just a very smart fighter.
Yeah. So, and
our guy Holly.
And they were building up Archer, Irish American
right.
in New York.
Yeah, they were grooming him, and they didn't want anything to get in the way.
And they'd put him in the ring with Holly Mims.
Right.
No one wanted to fight Mims.
Right.
So that was unfortunate.
Holly Mims ever win a championship? Did he ever?
Never got a title fight.
No.
He would have had the title fight, except with Bobo Olsen, but he lost to Castellani on an upset, and so Castellani got the title fight. And Bobo Olsen, if it wasn't for Sugar Ray Robinson, would be ranked as one of the great middleweights of all time. But Robinson knocked him out 3 times. He was born, he should have told his parents to wait before he was born. Because,
timing is everything, isn't it?
Everything.
Yeah, of course, Sugar Ray Robinson, one of the greats of all time. Rick, you've been covering boxing, you mentioned to me, since the early 80s. That's, of course, the time when Tommy Cordova, you covered Danny Romero, Johnny Tapia, Sean McClain. You were around when Holly Holm, was fighting. And I think Austin and I talk about this all the time. Right now in Albuquerque, there's a lot of exciting fighters on the horizon. Matthew Diamond Boy Griego, Matthew Papitas Escobar, Josh Pitbull Torres. There's a lot of, it's an exciting time for Albuquerque fighting, I think. I think Austin thinks that as well. Is there a particular fighter that you have your eyes on, and you cover fights still for the Journal? You covered a lot of fights. And what's your particular opinion about the fighters I just mentioned? And do you think it is an exciting time for Albuquerque boxers?
Well, it is. And the two guys I really have my eye on are Jason Sanchez.
We didn't even mention him.
Had a big win in Panama recently and signed by Top Rank. I believe he has a fight coming up probably on January the 12th. And Angelo Leo, who is from here, now lives and trains in Vegas, but he's an Albuquerque kid. He won on Friday in Vegas. He signed with Mayweather Promotions. He's 15-0. Those two guys in particular are the guys I'm really looking. If Matt Griego can get back in action, I guess he's back in January.
He's back in January, and another fighter, Brian Mendoza, is out in Vegas now.
Right. I think Jason and Angelo are two guys who have the goods, and I think Matthew Griego does too. He just needs to be more active.
And Griego, I saw him last year at the Battle of the Brave at the Manuel Lujan Fairgrounds, and he's got. A lot of people compare him to Tapia. He comes out, he's got the entourage. He's exciting, he's quick, he's fast. Of course, Johnny Tapia, one of the greatest, 5-time champion. Everybody knows who Johnny is. It's a tough legacy to live up to. But he's been, it seems to me, Rick, in and out of the ring, inactive, active, inactive for long periods of time. So, I think if he's going to get to that level, he's got to stay busy.
He's got to get back in the ring. He's got to be seen. He certainly has. I think he has the same kind of talent that Jason Sanchez and Angelo Leo have. The talent that would justify him signing with a major promoter. They just have to see him. He just needs to get back in the ring and show what he can do.
So just get busy. Austin.
I think one of his problems, he has to fight better competition. He's had the one very good fight, a veteran Mexican fighter with over 60 fights.
In Phoenix, right?
And he stopped him in the third round, I believe.
Okay.
But he got banged up a little himself.
Okay.
So he needs better competition to polish up his defensive skills.
Well, he needs somebody to take him under his wing and get him one of those, shall we say, discovery fights like Jason Sanchez had in Panama. Sanchez went down there as the opponent, beat the top-ranked contract fighter and became a top-ranked contract fighter. And that's what happened. Angelo just went out to Vegas and got the exposure in the Mayweather gym. They liked him and said, hey, come fight on our card, wins, gets signed. Well, Matthew just needs that kind of break.
Well, that's what Brian Mendoza's doing. He's been out in Vegas now for about 5-6 weeks.
Right.
And Chris, the sparring out there is incredible.
Right.
And so he's getting baptized just in the gymnasium.
Right.
But they want to move him in a hurry because he's 25 or 6 years old now.
Yeah, he needs to.
He's not a kid.
He needs to get moving if he's going to do it.
I think the big for Jason Sanchez to go down there, Alacrancito, to go down there to Panama, Rick, and win against, as you mentioned, the contract fighter, because those decisions sometimes in a hometown, how they go. I thought that was a big victory, and then he signs with Top Rank 2 weeks after that, I believe.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I think, as you mentioned, he's got, we've had him in studio several times. Right. So I think his future seems very, very bright.
Yeah. And as Austin, as you said with Matthew, until then, the level of Jason's competition had not been that good. And that may have been one reason Top Rank thought, well, he was safe for Rivera, their contract fighter. It turned out differently.
I think his competition, though, was...
As he progressed, he fought some
Diamond
tough...
Boys had 9 fights.
Yeah. Jason fought some tough, experienced guys.
Right.
But it was... He had not proven himself, and he went down to Panama and did just that.
But I think his level of competition, if you compare his first 10 fights against Diamond Boys, they were better opponents.
I would agree with that, sure.
And they weren't falling down in the first round. They were tough.
Right.
So. You've also seen Angel Baby Pettis and Abraham Pettis on the rise. What's your opinions of them? I mean, they're tough fighters, and Austin's one of the things Austin had said was that Angel Baby Pettis needed to step up in competition. He did. Have you watched him?
I have, and he's another guy that I would put in the same category with Matthew. Not as many fights, a lot of talent, skilled. Not a big puncher, but he can punch. And his little brother really surprised me last week in Salt Lake City.
Abraham.
Yeah. He's obviously he's an Olympic prospect. Whether he actually gets there or not is another matter. But he's earned his shot. Those kids are very skilled, very talented. That gym is a going concern down there. The Pettis gym. They're doing a good job.
They'll love to hear that. They're sponsors of the show.
Right.
So
That's not what I said at all.
They'll definitely love to hear
I'm
that.
looking at the logo there, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's definitely a good plug,
Right.
Austin.
Well, I got to give the Perez brothers credit because I've been really down on Angel Perez, and they never tried to tell me, hey, it's
muzzle
so
you.
easy. They
Not
just
yet.
let me. But I was really impressed by his win over Martinez. I thought that was a really good showing on the part of Angel. And Abraham, I thought he won the fight the other night.
Have not seen it. I can
Well, the referee kept warning the opponent for reaching in and grabbing constantly, and Abraham was throwing the heavier punches, and I just thought he won the fight. And Yoruba Maru's daughter, she got stopped in the second round, and myself and Rick have a differing opinion, but I thought the referee in that fight was horrible.
I thought he was bad in that when he stepped in to give instructions, he was acting like a trainer. He would stop everything for 5 to 10 seconds. Well, do this, don't do this, don't, not behind the head, all this. Just jump in there and say what you want to say and get out and let him
Do your
fight.
job.
But Austin, we do disagree on whether the stoppage was good or not, because it was. I thought it was 3 legitimate standing eights, and at that point, I mean, Shariah wasn't really. She was. I mean, she's got heart. She was still throwing, but she wasn't landing, and the other young lady was snapping her head back, and I didn't have a problem with the stoppage.
Well, I don't want to get Sid Ware in trouble. He referees, and he thought he didn't like the referee either.
Well, yeah, I didn't like him for the reasons I cited, but
I
thought the stoppage was.
I thought he had a date, and he wanted to get out of the ring in a hurry. I just didn't see. That's just my opinion. I wasn't getting hit.
You know, Rick, I don't want to ask you this. You covered, with the Journal since '65. You're semi-retired now, and you come back and you write about boxing. But again, you think about, you've been there since '65. It's a long time. But what's changed about covering boxing since you covered it in the '80s? Now, there wasn't a lot of female fighters back then. There is now.
Right.
So what's changed so much, in your opinion, in covering the fight game?
Certainly the advent of women's boxing is a huge has been a huge change. We can thank Holly Holm for that. She wasn't the first, but she was the best. And other than that, I think maybe it's just because I'm not quite as close to it as I used to be. Other things have kind of interceded. I think the boxing community gets along better than it did back in the '80s, when the Tapia Romero relationship turned so ugly, and promoters were at each other's throat. Sometimes I think I over-covered that stuff back in the day, and maybe there's stuff that goes on now that I'm not aware of because I'm doing something else, Lobo football or whatever. But I get that feeling that people just get along a whole lot better than they used to.
Now, Johnny and Tapia and Daniel Romero didn't fight till '97. Some pictures there. Great job, Austin. And, I saw that a little bit. I remember being at a Tapia fight at the pit and watching that, and Romero's people off to the side, So there was a lot of that. There was. I mean, that's why they couldn't have the fight here. They put it in Vegas.
Right.
But so you're thinking it's and you would know you covered both fighters extensively during that time.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's definitely a little moods are a little
think
different
so.
now.
I mean, we don't have. We're talking about Willie Villanueva and Matthew Escobar and people like that. We're not talking about anything of that magnitude. Two local fighters fighting each other, on the big stage, you know, with a tremendous amount of pre-fight publicity. We haven't seen anything like that since, and we never see it again. May never see it again. But my sense is maybe it's a kinder, gentler boxing community than it was back in the day, back in the 80s and 90s.
That's probably better. Austin, about 3 minutes left. Go ahead.
Well, I'd probably go the other route. We have 4 sanctioning bodies, and if they have a champion, the other divisions don't even have them in their top 10. And what we're seeing now in boxing, as opposed to when Rick and myself were kids, there was 8 champions. Now you have 64 champions. There's 17 weight divisions. What do we need 3-pound weight divisions for? And these fighters are paying for their belts, 3% of their purse. So we're not seeing the best fights at all. They made a big thing about Lomachenko having a unification fight. Well, there's 4 champions, not 2. And so I kind of see it differently. And I think it's harmful, and I think boxing made a huge mistake when they did away with 15-round title bouts. And the Tyson Fury fight, I was with Sid Ware and a couple of other fight people, and it took them about 12 minutes to figure out who won the fight. And right then I knew there was something screwy. And of course it came out to be a draw.
Okay.
And so I think there's a lot that boxing could do to really clean up its act.
Okay. So why exactly do you miss the 15-round title fights?
Because I think they were, first of all, you have an odd number of rounds. So if we get a real close fight, you went around, I went around, it's going back and forth at the end of 12 rounds, there's a very good chance you're gonna have a draw. You have 15-round title fights, and you have fewer draws because you have an odd number of rounds. And the 12-round fights came about when Dooku Kim got killed.
Exactly.
And they said it was for the safety of the fighters. Well, right. If it's for the safety of the fighters, you should have 1-round fights. Because there was no study done on that at all. Okay. And, and I thought it was ridiculous.
And yet it still persists to this day. Got about a minute left. Rick, go ahead.
Sure. Well, it's interesting that all pro fights are even numbered rounds.
Right.
Essentially, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. That's never really bothered me, except at the low end, with the, 4 rounds to me doesn't make sense because, again, like Johnny Tapia's first fight, he was very first fight, pro fight. He was nervous. He was in California against a kid with much more experience. Lost the first 2 rounds, came back, established his superiority, but he only got a draw. So
interesting.
6, 8, 10, 12 has never bothered me. 4, yeah, that bothers
that's gonna have to do it. Rick, thanks so much for being on with us. We're gonna have to bring you on again because there's just so much we have to ask you. We can't cover it in 30 minutes.
Be happy to do so. Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on.
Thanks,
For producer Josh Brown, Austin Colleen, Albuquerque Journal writer Rick Wright, I'm Ed Nunez. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode of Legacy Boxing Promotions.